Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 101, and it's part 10 of The Last Zombie Hunter. When last we left, Fred and Mackenzie were checking out some, what was going on with a strange sort of herding of the zombies that they had seen before that in the previous episode, and had ended up finding the people and the zombies, but ended up getting spotted in return, and the chase is on. So if you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter, and here we go. The moans grew in volume even as we took off, but that was not my immediate concern. Mostly I want to get the humans off our back. We ran back to the path by the creek. Our eyes were starting to readjust to the gloom. Remarkable how looking at a fire, even across a field for not very long, can wreck your night vision. Still, we did not dare use our flashlights, and I could see better and better. I waited until we turned a curve and were definitely out of sight of the closest humans. I drew my pistol, slowed just enough to point it behind me, and fired several times. The point was just to stop the humans from wanting to follow us. I figured they'd instead let their zombies catch up with them. I figured with just a bit of a lead, we might get away from them. It's strange what goes through your head when the adrenaline is pumping and death is at your heels. Something about needing to survive put the idea of health and fitness in my head, and I remember thinking about how much weight I had lost in the short couple of months since Big Z. I had been overweight and even a bit flabby, but a restricted diet and a series of projects involving physical activity had toned me to a level I hadn't achieved since high school, if then. Of course, I also reflected the humans behind us were probably undergoing a similar transformation. And then there were the zombies. I hadn't been able to observe a zombie over a long period of time, though I imagine some of the humans behind us would have had the chance. So I didn't know if the zombies would, for instance, gain weight if they ate a lot, beyond simply bringing food into their bodies. Then we ran past the spot where we normally would turn towards our house. But when Mac started to turn off the path, I grabbed her shoulder. "We can't bring them straight to our home. We need to make sure they aren't following us." We continued on. The path continued. My mind raced ahead, trying to piece together where we were going and what was there. Then we heard another noise behind us. It was a noise I hadn't heard for weeks. It was an internal combustion engine. No, probably two of them. It sounded like small ones, maybe motorcycles or four-wheelers. The houses to the side had backyards without fences. I pulled Mac off the path. "We can't be seen," I said. "Like it or not, it's time to head back to our home." "Then what?" Mac asked. But I didn't have an answer for her, not a real one. There's an SUV in my garage. It hasn't been run since Big Z. At first I was too busy blocking up my downstairs and prepping my house. Then, of course, I blocked the stairs, so I haven't even been to the store since then, let alone the garage. We moved as quietly as we could. The ATVs, which is what they turned out to be, zipped past us on the path. I could only presume they hoped to catch us out in the open, perhaps panicking, and then would run us down. Bold, since they must know we were armed. Perhaps they had body armor. Why hadn't we seen or heard motor vehicles before now, I wondered? They must be paranoid about running out of fuel. But for now there had to be a fair bit in various cars and even at gas stations. Gasoline didn't keep forever. Anything they didn't use within, say, a couple more months was likely to have gone bad. They'd do better with diesel, but ATVs wouldn't be diesel-powered. In any case, when Big Z came, there were a lot of crashes and vehicle noises that first day. Then, nothing. Then I would hear one or two, usually off in the distance. I couldn't remember any going right by my street. And though it wasn't on the main drag, my shop wasn't exactly hidden. So perhaps they just hadn't done a proper search of the city yet. The angle was different, but we made our way back as best we could to home. We were both glad there were no zombies or humans along the way. But that would not last. Now that they knew people were around, they were bound to make a search, probably focusing on the direction we ran, which would lead them to our home. We pulled up the ladders and made the house look as deserted as we could. No lights, and the windows blocked except for a few spy holes. "Help me with the stairway," I said to Mac. "We need a clear path down so I can get to the garage. I'll have to try to get the SUV going. Hopefully the gas is still good." She pitched in, lugging heavy chairs and other objects up the stairs without complaint as soon as I could dislodge them from the dam I had created. We didn't worry too much about noise. All the windows were closed, and the stairwell wasn't near any of the outer walls. It took half an hour of hard work, but finally we broke through. I pulled up short. "I don't think there are any zombies down here, but let's not lose our heads," I said to Mac. We had placed our flashlights at the top of the stairs, helping to light our work. I pointed, and Mac grabbed them and handed one to me. We made sure the downstairs was clear. I didn't actually think we had been invaded by the zombies. I had not seen any broken windows or other problems during my runs to get water and food, but it was good to be certain. Then we hustled to the garage and quickly checked that. It was, as you might expect, chock-a-block with antiques in various stages of readiness for sale. After clearing the garage, I snagged the keys from the hook near the door and checked the Explorer. It had no zombies, but it did have several boxes of items in the back. I'm gonna try the engine, but let's get those antiques out. Then I'd like you to go upstairs and pack. Grab your stuff and get the food, the guns, some basic tools, the bleach, and the water. Hopefully this won't take long. Actually, we may be screwed if it does. I don't have a second vehicle to get a jump from if the battery is dead. She helped me clear the car, then went upstairs. I decided to take it slowly. I got in the front seat and closed the door softly. I didn't think there were people right outside, but I couldn't rule it out either. Put the key in the ignition, and then, after half a second's thought, turned off everything to help the battery. The fan, the radio, everything. It was good to know there was at least power in it enough to run those, even if it was disconcerting to hear the radio playing static on a station that had been active 3 decades before I was born. I was torn between wanting to pump the gas or not. The gas was aging and may have oxidized. On the other hand, pumping the gas was an old-fashioned thing to do, not needed in modern vehicles. And revving the engine would be far more noisy than letting it start up at an idle. So I held my breath and turned the key. The engine hitched, then coughed. Then, with a slight whirring noise, it caught. The engine idled a bit rough. The gasoline was getting oxidized, but the computer and the engine could handle it. I looked at the gauges. Everything seemed normal. The battery power was low, but already creeping back up. And despite not having been run for all this time, I was not hearing worrisome sounds of grinding or gnashing that would indicate damage from lack of lubrication. It was going to be okay. And it looked like I had a bit over 3/4 of a tank of gas. I knew I had at least 1/4 of a tank, as I always refilled about that level, but I'd not been sure of how much I had, so that was another relief. I could not leave it running too long. There was likely to be some sound from outside, so it would be a bit of a risk, though someone would have to be quite close to hear it from outside. But there was also the problem of the air. The carbon dioxide and monoxide would rise rapidly with the garage door shut. In fact, it felt strange just sitting there in a running vehicle in an enclosed space. Wrong. My instincts were to get out of there. After a couple of minutes, when the battery gauge was back to its normal level, I shut off the engine. I opened the door and stepped out when a voice I didn't know said, "Hold it." I froze, and a flashlight blinded me. Whoever was telling me to stop was near the back of the SUV. Though he didn't say it, I assumed he had a gun. "Hey," I said quietly, "no problems, man. Close the door, and then walk this way slowly, one step at a time." I did as he asked, and as I approached, I confirmed that he had a pistol, barely visible in the glare from the flashlight. The man, whose face I couldn't really make out, started backing up around the car, leading me towards the stairs. He was backing up in a very dark garage he didn't know, so I was hoping he would trip, but he didn't. Instead, he backed away all the way to the stairs, then waved me over to them. I was about to take the first step up when he stopped me. "Hands above your head," he said. "Cross your right leg in front of your left so that they touch." I did so and realized I couldn't do much of anything in this position, so he patted me down and took my pistol and my knife. I actually heard him toss them under the SUV. He must not have had a good way to carry them. "Okay, up," he said. I did so, slowly. That got us to the main floor. The garage only had a few steps up. The steps to go upstairs were not far. We going up? I asked. Yeah, the man said. I started up the stairs. The man followed me. He'd been smart before, but now he was a little too close. Maybe he was nervous in the dark, maybe he just didn't realize how closely he was following. I took a step, bent over forward, and kicked back behind me hard in a mule-style kick. It caught the man in the upper chest, and I both heard and felt something pop. It was probably a collarbone. He immediately pitched over backwards. His gun and his flashlight were both lost, tumbling away into the items we had moved down out of my blockade instead of up from it. The flashlight weakly lit the scene from under a bureau. The man was wheezing and clearly could hardly breathe. The wind knocked out of him. "Don?" Another voice called from upstairs. "Coming up," I called, trying to pitch my voice to be like Don, even though I'd only heard him say a few words. I ran back to the garage to find my gun, and then to find out what was happening with Mackenzie upstairs. And that's the end of this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Copyright 2019, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.